couple of years ago, a friend of mine who also happens to be one of the preeminent athletic trainers in the world. Some of you who've been around for a while might have heard of this guy. His name is Charles Poliquin. Charles, years ago, this guy was always in good shape. He was always, he trained world-class athletes. He trained a number of Olympic champions. And he worked out himself. Like I said, he was lean. He looked in good shape. Very intelligent guy. He suffered a heart attack. And, the first thing that comes to mind when you see a guy like Charles with his great body composition, in other words, low body fat, very active, exercising, eats a good diet, you wonder why would a guy like that have a heart attack? Well, I'm not exactly sure why. I can only go by what Charles himself stated as the cause of his heart attack. He felt that his heart attack was caused by a lack of magnesium in his body. Charles believed that he had some sort of genetic problem where his body would lose excess amounts of magnesium, and it kind of set him up for a heart attack. Now, a couple of years later, Charles did pass away. I think it might have been also from cardiovascular disease. I don't know exactly which type he had. I don't know whether it was a heart attack or a stroke. I don't even know if it was related to magnesium, but with the first heart attack, Charles attributed to a lack of magnesium. Perhaps he didn't eat enough magnesium in his diet. I never asked him about that, so I don't know. The problem with magnesium, first of all, magnesium, I've discussed this in previous videos. Magnesium is an extremely important mineral. It activates over 300 enzymes in the body. Among these enzymes are those involved in energy production, amino acid utilization. So in that respect, magnesium is anabolic. Magnesium is needed to stabilize ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. That's the most elemental source of energy in cells. All the food you eat that provides calories, carbohydrates, fats, protein, they all are eventually converted in the mitochondria to ATP, and that's the immediate energy source. And magnesium stabilizes ATP. Magnesium is also important for potassium metabolism, and they kind of work together. Potassium is another important mineral for the heart. But what I wanted to talk about today was the relationship between magnesium and cardiovascular health, and I think it's an important topic because of the fact that magnesium in foods is found in only a limited number of foods. The typical bodybuilder, fitness, athlete diet is not really rich in magnesium. And that's problematic because bodybuilders and athletes, when you work out very hard, high intensity exercise or training, you tend to lose more magnesium than usual. And because of this, some of the people who research magnesium believe that the current recommended daily intake of magnesium, which is 400 milligrams for adults, is too low for anyone who engaged in intense exercise or vigorous athletics. They suggest that a better figure probably would be about 800 milligrams. Now, magnesium, one of the things it does, it's a natural calcium channel blocker. Now, why is that prudent? Why is that important? Well, doctors often prescribe calcium channel blocker drug. I almost said dogs. I have dogs on my mind. Calcium channel drugs to treat hypertension or high blood pressure, and they do. And in that sense, the way calcium interacts with smooth muscle. I'm not going to go into all the biochemical intricacies. It's pointless to do that. This is a video for the public, not for scientists, although I don't mind if scientists listen to it. But the point being that calcium is involved in smooth muscle contraction and also regular muscle contraction. It's released in a portion of the muscle called the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is still another topic. But I want to talk again about magnesium. The problem is that magnesium is found in a limited number of foods, whole grains, nuts, leafy greens, a couple of, and that's basically it. I mean, if a lot of these foods aren't common in typical bodybuilding and fitness diets, so it's pretty likely that bodybuilders and fitness enthusiasts might not even be getting the minimal 400 milligrams daily. However, the scientific studies seem to differ with that. For example, in 2004, an expert consultation for the Food and Agricultural and World Health Organization concluded that evidence was lacking for nutritional magnesium deficiency with dietary intakes less than the current dietary reference intakes of the United States, Canada, and Europe. In other words, they're trying to say that most people do get enough magnesium, which I find that hard to believe because most people do not follow balanced diets. In other words, they don't eat this required number of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and all that. So I don't understand how they could come to that conclusion. But in 2010, the dietary guidelines for Americans' position on magnesium was that it was not a major nutrient of concern for health and well-being beyond those individuals taking medications or having disorders that inhibit magnesium absorption or increase its excretion. Again, if you're not getting your magnesium from the minimal food sources that contain magnesium, how could you possibly be getting enough magnesium unless you take a supplement? As late as 2014, the Harvard Medical School's Health Beat Advisory stated that magnesium deficiency is very rare. Now that's crazy because I've seen other studies which suggest that as many as 75% of the American population don't even consume the minimal 400 milligrams a day of magnesium. I don't know how these scientific consensus people can reach these conclusions. It is only in the last 10 years that serious attention has been given to inadequate magnesium status, having an impact on the incidence of cardiovascular disease in the general population. Now, if we go way back to 1932, magnesium deficiency was induced in rats, and one of the symptoms of magnesium deficiency was cardiac arrhythmia. That's a disturbance in the electrical conduction system of the heart. It can cause anything from atrial fibrillation, which is fairly common, and it's not benign because atrial fibrillation increases your chances of a stroke 5 times over normal, to the deadly ventricular fibrillation. In ventricular fibrillation, the heart literally stops pumping blood. It would look like a bag of worms if you could look at it. It's not pumping blood, and because of that, you have 6 minutes to undergo cardioversion. You've seen that in the movies where they put the electric shocks on somebody, or maybe if you're lucky, somebody who knows how to do good CPR. You got 6 minutes before you undergo brain death and you're dead with ventricular fibrillation. Now, where does magnesium come into play? As was shown in the rat study, magnesium is involved in stabilizing the electrical conduction system of the heart. In other words, it keeps the electrical conduction system working properly so you don't slip into having a rhythm disturbance or an arrhythmia. Taurine is an amino acid that's also very important in that respect because in the heart, taurine helps regulate calcium, magnesium, sodium, and other electrolytes that are involved in the electrical conduction system of the heart. But magnesium plays a major role. Although some signs and symptoms occurring in predisposing diseases affect the intake, absorption, or excretion of magnesium, they were ascribed to magnesium deficiency. The first experimental verifiable human magnesium deficiency was not reported until 1969. Animal cellular and human studies have provided several mechanisms through which magnesium deficiency can contribute to the occurrence of cardiovascular disease. These mechanisms are based on magnesium having a vital role in metabolic pathways as a cofactor for over 600 enzymatic reactions that include those that are involved in lipid, that's fat metabolism, and cellular messenger systems. Magnesium also regulates cellular ion channels, transporters, and signaling that govern calcium, potassium, and sodium movement in and out of the cell. As a result, magnesium is a controlling factor in smooth muscle contraction, cardiac excitability, vasomotor tone, and blood pressure. Numerous reports have indicated individuals with chronic latent magnesium deficiency have changes in the mechanisms that are important for cardiovascular health. A more recent meta-analysis, that's a meta-analysis is a collection of prior studies where they try and look at these studies and come to a conclusion based on a number of studies rather than a single studies. But a recent meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials also indicated that magnesium supplementation is likely magnesium deficient individuals decreased serum C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein is a general, they check for that in blood tests. C-reactive protein is indication of inflammation in the body, although it doesn't show any specific inflammation. And inflammation is an underlying cause of cardiovascular disease. In other words, even the statin drugs, which are the most widely prescribed drugs to treat cardiovascular disease, they used to think it worked mainly by lowering blood lipids like cholesterol and that kind of thing. But now they know that the main action of statins is to help control excess inflammation in blood vessels that leads to atherosclerosis. So also magnesium tends to promote nitric oxide synthesis. Nitric oxide is produced from the amino acid arginine. It works to dilate blood vessels. It lowers blood pressure. It also maintains the suppleness of arteries and blood vessels that helps prevent the onset of atherosclerosis, which is probably the number one risk factor for having a heart attack. The inflammatory stress related to chronic latent magnesium deficiency can adversely affect heart health in several different ways, including by causing oxidative damage, deranged lipid metabolism, such as elevated cholesterol, triglycerides, and altered endothelial function. The endothelium is the lining of the blood vessels, and that's where you get the plaque development that narrows the blood vessels, causes atherosclerosis, and that's where nitric oxide comes into play because it helps prevent some of that stuff. And as I said, magnesium increases localized nitric oxide production in blood vessels. Animal studies indicate that magnesium deficiency induce dyslipidemia, that's abnormal elevated blood fats like cholesterol, triglyceride, contributes to atherosclerotic vascular disease. The dyslipidemia includes serum and plasma increased phospholipid and triglyceride concentrations, variable cholesterol concentrations, and modifications in lipoproteins like high-density lipoprotein and low-density lipoprotein, which are cholesterol carriers. Magnesium deficiency also increased triglyceride-rich lipoproteins that were associated with an increase in plasma ApoB and a decrease in ApoI and ApoE. ApoB is the protein backbone of low-density lipoprotein, and ApoB is now considered probably the number one risk factor for cardiovascular disease. In other words, in the normal blood lab test related to cardiovascular disease, they'll check for blood lipids, they'll check your blood pressure, and they'll check for blood lipids such as cholesterol, triglycerides, and they'll check for high-density lipoprotein, which is protective, and low-density lipoprotein, which some people consider to be the so-called bad form of cholesterol, because LDL is the primary cholesterol carrier in the body. But what they really realize now is that there's different subclasses of low-density lipoprotein, and some of them are far less dangerous than others. Large, fluffy LDL particles are far less atherogenic than small, dense LDL particles. So what a lot of physicians are recommending is to really look at apolipoprotein B as the true measure of a risk for having cardiovascular disease such as heart attacks. And there's another one called lipoprotein small a, which is similar to LDL, which is also never checked in the usual lab tests. They never check for apolipoprotein B. They never check for lipoprotein small a. And these things really give you a lot of information. You can have normal values of the other blood lipids and have abnormal values in ApoB and lipoprotein small a. So you could look normal, and the doctor will say, "Oh, you're fine. You're not going to have a heart attack." When in fact, if these things are elevated, ApoB and lipoprotein A, you're at about 5 to 6 times greater risk of having a imminent heart attack or even a stroke or something like that. In the heart, magnesium deficiency increases the oxidation of lipids and lipoproteins, so to help to get rid of excess cholesterol, that kind of thing. Modified lipid concentration and oxidation in plasma and heart are considered contributors to the development of atherosclerotic lesions. Chronic latent magnesium deficiency can cause a disorder of endothelial function, as I said earlier, which is a key player in the initial steps in the genesis of atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, and hypertension. Animal studies have indicated that magnesium deficiency primes phagocytic cells. These are immune cells such as granulocytes, macrophages that are involved in the atherosclerosis process. Having a magnesium deficiency causes these immune proteins to secrete pro-inflammatory cytokines. And the cytokines are what cause the inflammation that occurs in the blood vessels. A primary factor for this priming is an increase in intracellular calcium. Magnesium has been called nature's physiological calcium channel blocker, as I said earlier. In magnesium deficiency, cellular calcium increases through an influx from extracellular sources via slow calcium transport channels and release from intracellular sources such as the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Increased intracellular calcium increases the release of inflammatory cytokines such as interleukin-1, interleukin-6, and tissue necrosis factor A, as well as leukotrienes, neuropeptides, and prostaglandins, all of which are involved in inflammation. Hypokalemia is a low blood potassium level or low blood body potassium level. It's common in patients with severe hypomagnesia or low magnesium because magnesium and potassium kind of work together. In fact, potassium helps retain magnesium in the body and vice versa. However, the promotion of potassium depletion from the body by magnesium deprivation can result in reduced intracellular and total body potassium, even when the plasma or serum potassium is not appreciably reduced. Intracellular potassium depletion is apparently involved in the cardiac rhythm disturbances that can be present in patients with magnesium deficiency. These rhythm disturbances include atrial fibrillation, ventricular premature contractions, and junctional arrhythmias. Because magnesium has so many critical functions, the body has mechanisms to ensure it is available to perform them. During low intakes of magnesium, the percentage absorbed from the diet is increased. That's true with most minerals. In other words, your body can sense when you're low in any particular mineral, and it increases the absorption of the mineral to make up for that, and vice versa is true. If your body if you're consuming enough of the minerals, and you take, let's say, excess minerals, the body will excrete the excess. That's the way the minerals are adjusted by the body. The amount excreted in the urine is decreased, and the body reserves, especially in bones, are accessed. When dietary magnesium provides more than sufficient magnesium for body functions, the opposite occurs. In other words, the magnesium is excreted. Now, things that can cause a loss of magnesium include use of diuretic drugs, which is common among competitive bodybuilders, drugs to treat ulcers called proton pump inhibitors, excess alcohol consumption, and problems with kidney function can cause a loss of magnesium. Stress can cause increased magnesium excretion, and magnesium is lost in sweat during exercise and with higher intensity training. Based on the current dietary recommended intake of magnesium, surveys indicate a large number of individuals routinely have different intakes of magnesium. Basically, well, I'm not going to go into it, but basically it turns out that the survey indicates that almost 50% of adult females and 25% of adult males would have intakes below less than the suggested recommended intake of. They say it's 250 milligrams a day, but I think I've read that it's 400. I don't know where they're getting this from. I think 250 milligrams a day of magnesium is the minimal you need to prevent a outright magnesium deficiency. It's likely that more than 25% of adults have usual intakes that could result in chronic latent magnesium deficiency or mild to moderate magnesium deficiency that can contribute to the risk of cardiovascular disease. It's not surprising that a large number of adults commonly consume inadequate amounts of magnesium. The best food sources for magnesium are green leafy vegetables, seeds, whole grains, pulses, and nuts. This is what I mean. If you don't eat these foods, you're not getting magnesium. There's no magnesium in high protein foods, chicken, meat, eggs, almost no magnesium at all. If you don't eat these foods, you're not getting magnesium, and you need to take a supplemental form of magnesium. The one study reported that the average adult consumes much less than the recommended daily intake of whole grains, green vegetables, and pulses. No kidding. Best supplemental forms of magnesium, if you do want to take supplemental magnesium, The best forms are magnesium glycinate, citrate, and there's one called magnesium threonate, which is the only form of magnesium that can get into the brain effectively. Very good for brain health. So that's about it. If you're interested in maintaining heart health, it's very important that you get enough magnesium. And as I said, magnesium is not commonly found in most bodybuilding diets, especially restricted diets. Unless you're eating the foods I mentioned, you're probably not getting enough magnesium, and it would behoove you to take a magnesium supplement. I always take a magnesium supplement. My preferred forms, I take magnesium glycinate, and at night, before sleep, I'll take some magnesium threonate to help me sleep, and because it's very good for the brain. So that's about it for magnesium. If you want more information on nutrition, exercise science, anti-aging research, ergogenic aids, supplement science, which ones work, which ones don't, women's health and fitness, effective fat loss techniques, all of these are covered in my Applied Metabolics at www.appliedmetabolics.com. It's not expensive at all. It's 25 to 40 pages. No ads, just pure evidence-based information that's also based on my over 6 decades of constant study and learning, which I don't think could be matched by anybody else. So subscribe today. When you subscribe, send me an email. I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolic Facebook page, where each day I post new information on nutrition, exercise science, and general health and medicine. I have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics webpage where current subscribers only can send me short questions about anything they might have read in Applied Metabolics or anything that is of interest to them related to nutrition and exercise. If you think my channel here is of any use, again, there's no advertisement, just pure solid information. Please feel free to subscribe. I post the new information every Tuesday, and by all means, let others know about it. I'd appreciate that. So thank you for listening. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever find, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. Thank you for listening.